What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. I'm your host, Mike Tagliere. Thank you guys so much. We have another year in front of us, and we have a full day of football ahead, and you're not going to find someone that's more excited than me, honestly. I've been looking forward to this, to talking to you guys again, picking up from last year. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can for the next hour. I promise you I'm not going to pick any favorites or anything like that. I'm going to go through questions in a timely fashion. I'm going to let you guys know about injuries that you have to know about, and basically just try and get you ready for week one, make you guys feel better about setting your lineups. If you guys haven't yet, please do me a favor. Click the subscribe button if you haven't. Click the like button. It really does help us out. Lets the bosses know that we're doing a good job for you guys. But let's start out on the injury front. Obviously, you can see on our amazing graphics guy, Chris, has given us graphics along the bottom that's going to highlight all the injuries that you need to know about as we head into week one. I'm going to briefly touch on them in the beginning just because I think it's important. The top two that are out of the lineups are Miles Sanders. If you drafted him in the first round, I'm sorry about that. Obviously, it's not ideal to have him not available in week one in a good matchup against Washington. Boston Scott is someone that's going to be a topic of a lot of questions in the comments. I know that much already. We're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about maybe even Corey Clement if you're in a tight spot and you need a last-minute flex spot, replacement. He could be someone we could talk about. Deebo Samuel, he actually went on IR. He's not going to be available until at least week 4 for them. They're hoping that he's ready at that time. Doubtful is Kenny Golladay. I don't know if he's officially been ruled completely out, but he's not expected to play today against the Bears, so get him out of lineups. This obviously gives a bump to someone like Marvin Jones. It gives a bump to TJ Hawkinson, even Danny Amendola to a certain extent. The ones that are highly questionable, I'm going to run through them really quick. David Montgomery, he is expected to play, might be on a bit of a snap count, so I'm not exactly crazy high on David Montgomery today. I have him as like a middling RB3 that he's probably going to need to score a touchdown to live up to anything in your lineup, which is really tough. Going down, Mike Evans, he is now expected to play. He was actually ruled doubtful on Friday. They upgraded him to questionable on Saturday, and now they're saying he's going to be active, but that he's going to be on somewhat of a snap count. So it's a little bit risky. It's not a great matchup against New Orleans. He has not traditionally done very well against Marshawn Lattimore. So he's moved down in my rankings. RB, I think wide receiver 37 or something like that. So he's just like a risky wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 option. Mike Williams is expected to play now for the Chargers. I believe he's going to be out there as a decoy. I have him ranked as like my 60th wide receiver. So you probably have better options on your roster. And then lastly, Courtland Sutton. He's the one that we really don't know too much about. He did not practice yesterday. His shoulder injury that he's dealing with did require an MRI. So they were obviously worried about it. But he doesn't play until tomorrow. So we don't have too much info here. He's considered questionable. I did move him down into that Mike Evans range because I think there's a chance he doesn't play. And I would just rather take a guaranteed shot on someone like, let's say that you have Anthony Miller stashed on your bench. I would rather play Anthony Miller than someone like Mike Evans or Courtland Sutton this week, just because there's just too much risk this week. So that's going to do it for the injuries, guys. I told you I did not want to spend a whole lot of time talking about injuries. I want to answer as many questions as I can for you guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. Let's win some football games. All right, so let's start up. And again, guys, I am not skipping over anyone. I'm grabbing random questions here, just going through the chat and grabbing them. So please don't flood the chat with the same question over and over. I'm just going to try and grab what I can. Where do you rank Brandon Ayuk? He's down there in that wide receiver 5 territory. I'm not high on him this week. He didn't practice for much of the week, and then when he did return, it was very limited. It's his first NFL game. The matchup is fine, but you think about it. Patrick Peterson, who's he going to cover? There's nobody else in this team at wide receiver that they're really concerned about. So I'm guessing they're probably going to play a sides thing, him and Byron Murphy. So that means Brandon Ayuk is going to see Patrick Peterson probably half the time. So it's just not a great matchup. Him coming off that hamstring injury, I'd rather play it safe and go with someone else. Let's see. Adam asked, standard flex Ronald Jones, Kareem Hunt, or take a shot on Bryan Edwards. I'm probably going to go with Kareem Hunt here just because I think the game script fits his role in this offense. This is a team that's probably going to give their running backs 30 touches per game. So even if Nick Chubb does take 18 touches per game, Kareem Hunt should still get 12 of them. The matchup against Baltimore is obviously not ideal, but Ronald Jones against New Orleans is such a good defense. I think people underrate it continually. And then we've heard Bruce Arians talk about Leonard Fournette's going to have a role in week 1. So I don't. Bryan Edwards is just. We don't even know how many snaps he's going to play, guys. We don't know how many three wide receiver sets they're going to run. We don't know if he's going to be on the field for 2 wide receiver sets. I believe he's going to be, but there's just too many question marks there. Take the guaranteed touches with Kareem Hunt. Christopher asked, Kareem Hunt, Antonio Gibson, or Zach Moss? This is one where I could see going Gibson. And the reason I say that is because Hunt, even if he does get those 12 touches that I was just talking about, they may not amount to a whole lot. If you go back to Baltimore's game last year again with Kareem Hunt, he didn't play very well in that game. And it's just Baltimore doesn't allow big performances to running backs. So when you're playing Kareem Hunt, it's more of like a floor play. You just want someone to give you some points. You're not expecting a touchdown. Whereas Antonio Gibson, he's going to get some touches. I'm not going to say it's a great matchup against Philadelphia, but they are missing a couple players on defense. So that secondary got a lot better this offseason. So I'm really curious to see what the best way to attack Philadelphia is. So I'll probably take the upside with Gibson there. Let's see. Mark asks, full PPR, Mike Evans or Jamison Crowder? I'm going Crowder here, guys. So Jamison Crowder had 2 of his biggest games last year against this Bills defense, because the Bills, what they do, they have a great cornerback in Tre'Davious White. He's a guy who shuts down perimeter players, but they have a good safety unit that does extremely well with tight ends. So when you break down the targets and where they're going to go, they're going to funnel to, it's going to be Jamison Crowder. Whether or not he's efficient with those targets is obviously up to him, but in a PPR format, I would say minimum Jamison Crowder catches 5 balls in this game. Last year in the 2 games that they played, he caught 22 passes for, I think it was 195 yards and a couple touchdowns. 2 of the top 3 performances that the Bills allowed last year were to Jamison Crowder. The other one was to Jarvis Landry, another slot-heavy wide receiver. So that's clearly the area of the field you want to attack against Sean McDermott's offense. So yeah, I would definitely play Jamison Crowder, play it safe there. I didn't like Mike Evans too much before this injury, but now that you put him on a snap count against this cornerback unit, because again, it's not even just Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore has done really well against Mike Evans, but it's Janoris Jenkins too. Janoris Jenkins is a guy that they signed towards the end of last year. They got him basically because the Giants released Janoris Jenkins because there was some off the field stuff that he posted on social media. They cut him. And the Saints kind of reaped the benefits of that. They obviously took him on. There was some social media backlash, but at the same time, Janoris Jenkins is almost like a number 1 cornerback. So having him as your number 2, Mike Evans, no matter which side he's on, if Lattimore shadows or not, he's going to have a tough matchup. Is Golladay playing? I do not think so, Raphael. Mark asked, Minshew versus Stafford, tough call. I'm going Minshew here. I had Minshew ranked ahead of Stafford before we even heard about Kenny Golladay probably not playing. So I am going to stick with what I said and say that I'm going to go with Gardner Minshew here. I think the floor is just too high. Let's see here. The floor is I'm sorry, I was checking to make sure I didn't have any technical difficulties here. But the floor is just too high to pass on him. Obviously we know that Indianapolis is going to be able to run all over Jacksonville. That's going to happen. When it comes to the Jaguars running back situation with James Robinson as the starter, then you have Chris Thompson there as the pass catching running back. You're like, well, what else do they have? Ozigbo, he's not playing. He's out. Raquel Armstead, he's not playing. He's out. Dari Ogunbowale, he's a pass catcher, and he would just join the team this week. So we really can't expect much from those running backs. I do believe that Minshew's going to drop back to pass a whole lot. There's room for some rushing upside, obviously. And then Stafford against the Bears. It's a division matchup. The Bears, they're going to be missing Robert Quinn on the defense as well. So I don't want to say it evens out without Kenny Golladay, but it downgrades Stafford just a little bit. I'm not really into playing Stafford right now. He hasn't done well against this defense the last couple of years. Jacob asks, Gronk over McLaurin in a league where tight ends get 1.5 PPR. No, I'm not going to do that. Peter King, he came out and said that after visiting the Bucs camp, he's got a lot of, he knows a lot of people, but he said after visiting, he said it's possible that Rob Gronkowski ranks 3rd in snaps in this tight end unit for the Bucs. I don't know if I believe that, but obviously he's going to be sharing some time with O.J. Howard and even Cameron Brate. So I want to see how Gronk's used in this offense. McLaurin, that's a negative game script. I mean, that's why we like Terry McLaurin. That's why we drafted him as a top 24 wide receiver. The volume is going to be there. And everybody's talking about maybe Darius Slay is going to shadow him. I don't know if Philadelphia is going to use Slay in a shadow role. They haven't done that under Peterson. Even when they signed Darby to a big contract, he wasn't shadowing players around the field. And I'm not saying that Darby is on Darius Slay's level, but he was a good football player. So I'm going to play McLaurin there. Marcus asked, DJ Chark or Odell in the flex? Respond with flex next. Okay, I'm not sure what that meant, but DJ Chark is definitely my choice here. Odell Beckham against Baltimore. I don't think that he's a guy that you must sit. It is a tough matchup for them, but understand that Baltimore actually, Jimmy Smith came down with an injury during the week, and they're saying he's questionable for this game, which is obviously a downgrade for that secondary, but it's still a tough matchup against Baltimore. So Odell is more of like that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 this week, whereas DJ Chark, I have as a wide receiver 1. I have him as a top 5 or a top 12 play this week at wide receiver. The matchup against Indianapolis is just fantastic. You know, I think they're starting Xavier Rhodes, who they signed in free agency. Again, we could see basically maybe in camp they were like, nah, Rhodes is toast, because last year he allowed, I think it was a 130 passer rating in his coverage, and then Rock Ya-Sin is the other cornerback there in Indianapolis. And while people had high hopes for him, he wasn't great his rookie year, which was last year. So they're expecting him to grow. But DJ Chark, I'm going to go with Chark in that one. I just feel like the way he's being used in Gruden's offense and where they're moving him around the formation into the slot, I just believe that there's like big boom potential for someone like DJ Chark this week. Aaron Johnson asked Tariq Cohen or James White in the flex. I'm going to go with Tariq Cohen here. I mean, I understand wanting to play White, and I think White's a fine play too. I wasn't big on White in draft season, but we really just don't know how Cam Newton is going to target the running backs here. Obviously, they have Rex Burkhead coming out of the backfield. Julian Edelman's going to get a lot of targets. N'Keal Harry was questionable for this game. He's going to play. They cut Mohamed Sanu. There's so many moving parts in this Patriots offense. I don't feel comfortable projecting it. Whereas the Bears, we do know that David Montgomery's been dealing with the groin strain, that muscle. He is going to play. However, he could be limited. And Tariq Cohen already has a role in this offense. So it only helps if they're going to not be able to run the ball as much. There's no other competent running back behind David Montgomery. I mean, Ryan Nall is the only guy on the roster that's going to be active. So I'm going to say that David Montgomery is going to be somewhat limited. Tariq Cohen is going to see, I would anticipate at least 10 touches in this game, with a lot of it coming through the air. So Tariq Cohen is my choice here. I just know his role more than I do James White with Cam Newton under center. AB asks, Boston Scott or Jonathan Taylor in a full PPR. This one is so tough for me because I love Taylor, and I think that this could be a big game, but we do keep hearing about Marlon Mack and that he is going to be involved and he's going to be the starter. I figured that, Marlon Mack would be the starter and then he would slowly just lose that job even as the game went on against Jacksonville. I do think that there's room for both Taylor and Mack to perform here, but there is some uncertainty about that backfield that I'm not going to pretend that I know the answer to. So I'm probably going to play it safe with Boston Scott here. Boston Scott is a guy that obviously catches passes out of the backfield. I think if you look at the last 5 games he played, I think he had at least 6 targets in like all those games, maybe one where he didn't. So he's getting a lot of volume where it matters. Alshon Jeffrey's obviously out of the lineup. Jalen Reagor is going to play, but he's a rookie and he missed a lot of practice time. Deshaun Jackson, I mean, how many targets is he really going to get? So Boston Scott will be sharing a workload, and I am wondering about that. So I'm just going to answer this now because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people asking about Boston Scott. My concern is that it's more of a timeshare than people think. That Boston Scott nets probably 15 touches, but that Corey Clement also gets, 13 touches or so. That's where I'm kind of projecting this backfield, and it's tough for me to say anything strongly, like how I feel. But Boston Scott he's going to be like the bigger part of this timeshare, but it's just the question of how much. I've ranked him. I moved him up in my rankings. I'll tell you exactly where he's at. I moved him up to the RB19. I do have him 2 spots ahead of Jonathan Taylor just because I think he's a little bit safer. And you said this is a full PPR format, so that actually raises it a little bit more because my rankings are on half PPR. I like to do a mix in between so that a lot of people can look at those. So I do have Boston Scott slightly higher than Jonathan Taylor just because there's uncertainty around Taylor right now. And it's just safer to go Boston Scott here. Let's see. Adam asked Minshew or Stafford. I answered that one already. It was Minshew. Shai asked Lindsey or David Montgomery. I'm going to go with Phillip Lindsay in this game. So Phillip Lindsay, this is a fun fact. Melvin Gordon was obviously signed in free agency. Reportedly, we heard that Pat Shurmur came to town. They wanted to have a one-back system with just like a complement, someone like Phillip Lindsay. As training camp went on, they loved Phillip Lindsay a lot more than they thought they would in this Pat Shurmur scheme. So they say that he's forced a timeshare between these two. On top of that, Melvin Gordon is someone that's been dealing with issues adjusting to the Denver altitude. So if that's a real thing, they could be easing him into this offense because this game is being played in Denver. Phillip Lindsay has been fantastic. I think he's one of 9 running backs who has at least 1,000 yards rushing in each of the last 2 years. So he was already being underrated by a lot of, including his own team, to be fair. So I'm going to take Phillip Lindsay there. David Montgomery will be the choice most of the time just because he's going to get all those goal line touches, but I'm a little worried about him this week coming off the injury, so I'm going to say Lindsay. James asks, Kerryon Johnson or J.K. Dobbins in a half PPR? This one's really tough for me because the Detroit backfield is one that's extremely hard to predict. They had Kerryon Johnson listed as the number 1 running back on the depth chart. They had Adrian Peterson number 2, and then they had DeAndre Swift at number 3. Clearly, all 3 of these running backs are going to get some work in this game, but it's the Bears. What is the upside against the Bears? I don't think there's much at all. You know what I mean? And then you go to a team like the Ravens, and it's an ugly timeshare. It sure is, with Mark Ingram, with Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins, but it's also a matchup where there should be fantasy points scored. Who plays for the better offense? It's definitely J.K. Dobbins. So while Kerryon he might even get more touches than J.K. Dobbins, I'm probably just going to take the upside in Dobbins. I don't think either of them are great plays this week, if I'm being completely honest. But if I'm going to play one of them, I might as well shoot for this guy. All right. Always appreciate the advice tags. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it, man. Full PPR, Gallup, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson. In that one, I probably go with Jonathan Taylor. I'm taking the guaranteed touches, and I understand that we just talked about it. There's a risk that he's going to share touches with Marlon Mack, but that's fine. I think against the Jaguars, this team is going to run the ball 30 times, and I think you're going to see Jonathan Taylor very minimum in a 50-50 timeshare with Marlon Mack. So if he gets 15 carries against this defense, he's going to be good. Even 12 to 15 carries, whatever. But I'm going to say Jonathan Taylor would be where I'd go, Alex. All right, scrolling down here. Sid asked half PPR flex, Zach Moss, Devontae Parker, or John Brown. This one is so tough because Zach Moss, we don't know what to expect in his first game for Buffalo. I do like him. The Jets have been a good run defense, but they've lost a lot of players. They're going to be missing a lot of guys right up the middle of the field where it's like they should be stopping. But again, it is Moss's first game in the NFL. We don't know his role yet. It's so tough because, you have Josh Allen there competing with him for goal line touches. You have Devin Singletary. There's a lot of question marks. Devontae Parker, brutal matchup against Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore is a guy that shut him down. It was literally I think he had 7 targets in their first matchup last year. He caught nothing. He caught 0 balls. And then later in the year, I think it was week 15 or 16, Devontae Parker crushed him. So it's like, what are we going to get here? I don't really know. It's really difficult to say. But Devontae Parker, the reason I'm erring on the side of caution a little bit is because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. They held him out the last 2 weeks of practice, and they said that they were being cautious and they just wanted to protect him. But given his injury history, I think it's something we have to monitor and worry about a little bit. John Brown, obviously in a good matchup against these Jets. This Jets secondary is just not very good, including the back end now, with Jamal Adams gone. So there's a chance, but he's clearly the number 2 behind Stephon Diggs. And how much do the Bills really pass the ball in this game? I mean, I'm probably going to go with Devontae Parker and just hope he's healthy. I broke that question down to make you understand what I'd be thinking as a fantasy owner. And I think what's the best case scenario? John Brown doesn't offer much boom upside. He didn't last year with Stephon Diggs even off the team. Zach Moss, is it possibly he scores a touchdown? Absolutely. But I don't want to bank on it. I just don't know his role just yet in this offense. I'd prefer to wait. So I'll go Parker and hope for the best. Let's see. Gil, BRCS. Hey, I just want to stop and say thank you guys so much for being here. Seriously, I just want to give you a high five right through the stream here. Over 6,400 people. You guys rock. Thank you guys. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and like the video because it really does help us out, guys. Thank you. If you're enjoying what I'm doing here, please do that for me. All right, so let me get back to this. Gil, Drake or Carson in a full PPR? I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake here. I do have some concerns about Chris Carson in terms of what is actually going to happen. Pete Carroll said this is going to be a hot hand approach where they're going to go with it. I do believe it's going to be Chris Carson. I do. However, there is a risk that you have Carlos Hyde get, let's call it 10 to 12 touches. That's kind of a lot, right? It starts eating into that. And it's not like the running backs have a whole lot of targets in that offense. So suddenly you're looking at somewhat of a touchdown dependent Chris Carson. I like Carson just fine as an RB2, but if you have to choose between him and Kenyon Drake, a 3-down back that we don't have to worry about, I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake. I know the matchup is tough against San Francisco, but they did lose DeForest Buckner. They are dealing, like, they had some losses on this defense. They are getting older in the secondary, so I think they have to worry a little bit. I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake. He played well against them last year. That's where I'm going to go just because I feel like the touch floor is higher for Kenyon Drake. All right, Daraj, let's see. Tyler Boyd, Henry Ruggs, or Antonio Gibson in a full PPR. I am going to go with Tyler Boyd here. Against the Chargers, it's a tough matchup. I'm not even going to lie about it. But when you have A.J. Green and John Ross being, they're basically taking up Casey Hayward and Chris Harris Jr., those two are just like, they're going to have their hands full on the perimeter. And then you have Tyler Boyd over the middle of the field where Desmond King is a good cornerback. He's not bad at all, but he allows a high catch rate. He should rack up some catches here. So I'm going to say that Tyler Boyd is the best bet of them. Let's see. Jaden, PPR, Marvin Jones or Calvin Ridley if Galladay is out. I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley still here. Marvin Jones's matchup is decent. It's not great. So Marvin Jones isn't moved like around the formation. Like Detroit had a game plan in place. They have to kind of stick with that. And I don't know if Quintez Cephas is the one that's going to start in Kenny Galladay's spot. I don't know. But Marvin Jones, they can choose their matchup because the Bears don't shadow. Kyle Fuller is on one side, and then you're going to have the rookie Jalen Johnson on the other, and it's like, do you attack the rookie? I think they should. I did move him up in my rankings, but Calvin Ridley against that Seattle team, I think that's potentially a high-scoring matchup, so a lot of people are going to be attacking that, so that's where I'm going to go. All right. Corey. We have, let's see, Darius Slayton, Mike Evans. All right, guys, I need you. I should have announced this in the beginning. If you guys can narrow it down, please make it no more than 3 players, just because it's too much, and then I start diving into these way too much. So I'm sorry I have to pass that one. Daniel Standard, Boston Scott, or Marlon Mack. I'm going with Boston Scott in that one. Again, I realize that both of these players are going to be involved in timeshares, but Boston Scott having a role in the passing game, it just gives him a higher floor. Whereas Marlon Mack, if Jonathan Taylor starts going off, how do they go away from him, right? Marlon Mack has a chance, and being that this is a standard format, I think it is close between those two. I'm just going to take Boston Scott because I know he's the clear 1A in that timeshare, whereas Marlon Mack, he might be starting, but I really do believe he's the 1B. There's a lot of uncertainty there. It is a tough question, being it's a standard. If it was PPR, I'd say Boston Scott, no questions. But Marlon Mack might have a better shot at a touchdown. That's a toss-up, Daniel, and I'm sorry I couldn't be more help, buddy. It's just there's so many question marks about that Colts backfield. Let's see, Brian Thomas, PPR Flex, Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Boyd, Jerry Jeudy. Thanks. All right, so this one's tough. I love Jerry Jeudy, but I'm not going to play him in his first game as a wide receiver. That's really tough to do. Tennessee, I did find out Adoree Jackson is going to be ruled. I think he's been ruled out for this game already, which is massive because that secondary wasn't great to begin with. They do have a pass rush, though. And knowing that Cortland Sutton's dealing with an injury, I think Jerry Jeudy has sky-high potential here, but it's still his first NFL game. I don't want to go crazy and say, oh, you got to play him. Tyler Boyd, just talked about him. I feel like he's going to be a safety valve for Joe Burrow over the middle of the field, probably rack up a bunch of catches in a PPR format. Then we go to Jonathan Taylor, a guy that might catch 1 or 2 passes. That's worrisome in a PPR format. So knowing that we have the worries about that, we have the worries about, the timeshare with Marlon Mack, I think I probably go Tyler Boyd in a full PPR here. That's probably where I go. I just think it's the safest play in a PPR. Jeudy probably has the most upside of these 3, but I think it's safest to go Boyd, and he does have some upside as well. Ravi asked Terry McLaurin or Antonio Gibson. I'm going Terry McLaurin here. This obviously we look at the game script. I think that the Eagles are still favored by 5.5 points despite all the injuries that they've had. I think a lot of people are expecting this game to go a certain way, and it's realistic that it's going to go negatively for Washington just because they are in a brand new coaching staff. You know what I mean? They have a new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, everything. There's just so many moving parts here. They don't have the talent in the secondary. This team is going to allow some points. So when you start looking at it and you say, all right, what is Washington going to do? They're not going to be able to run the ball a ton. They're not built to run the ball a ton. So I'm going to go with the guy that I say is probably a lock for 8 targets, and that's Terry McLaurin. All right, Sean, flex in full PPR, Jonathan Taylor, Tariq Cohen, or Devontae Parker. This one I'm going to go with Taylor. I mean, Tariq Cohen offers a solid floor. I think Taylor's floor should match that of Tariq Cohen's, though. Even if he only gets 12 touches in this game against Jacksonville, that's plenty to do some work. Devontae Parker, talked about him matching up with Gilmore. Don't love it. I think Cohen's a fine floor play, but I'd rather take Taylor, who offers a similar floor to Tariq Cohen, but the ceiling is just much higher. Standard League, Mike Evans, Djax, or Gallup. I'm going Deshaun Jackson in that one. Mike Evans, just too much risk to play right now. Didn't love the matchup for him against Lattimore to begin with. And Deshaun Jackson, I mean, this defense, I mean, Washington's secondary is terrible. They replaced a washed-up Josh Norman with a washed-up Ronald Darby. Darby can't hang with someone like Deshaun Jackson. So, I mean, I'm going Deshaun Jackson there. Gallup is a fine play because you think about, well, if Amari Cooper is going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, which I don't know if it happens, to be honest with you. I really don't know if they're going to shadow Amari at all. Because Jalen Ramsey, when he went to the Rams, he was pretty much sticking on the perimeter, and Amari does move into the slot quite a bit. Gallup is pretty much a perimeter player. I think he went to the slot 11% of the time last year, so he doesn't really get away from him. And Troy Hill, the other perimeter cornerback, was actually really good last year. I'm not going to say he's a great cornerback because last year was his first good year, if I'm being honest, but there are some concerns there. So, yeah, I'm going to go Deshaun Jackson. Play him. If you drafted Deshaun Jackson and aren't playing him this week, there was really no reason to draft him. Let's see. GK asked Fournette, Michelle, or Thompson in a full PPR. Well, Fournette and Michelle are not catching passes. Like, that doesn't happen. Michelle, they've talked about easing him into the offense because he missed so much of training camp. Fournette is clearly behind Ronald Jones in week 1, even though they're going to give him some work. But against the Saints, it's not a good matchup. Michelle is, I'm debating Michelle here, but I'm going to go with Chris Thompson. And I'm going to say that just because of the running backs that they're going to have active there. Like, they need Chris Thompson to touch the ball. And if you go and look at Jay Gruden, he brought over Chris Thompson with him to run this offense. Chris Thompson is a guy that he's continually, when he's healthy, he's getting 8 to 12 touches in Jay Gruden's offense, and that's plenty to be a flex play. Whereas like someone like Sony Michel, being that he's not involved in the passing game and being eased into the offense, it's touchdown or bust. Whereas Chris Thompson, you're going to get a floor. He's going to catch at least probably 3-4 passes, probably going to rack up at least 40 yards through the air. If he gets a couple carries in there, great, with a chance at a touchdown. So I'm going to take Chris Thompson there. This is probably the only time this season I might say that. But yeah, I'm going to go Thompson. Let's see. Christopher S. Flex PPR, Zach Moss or Anthony Miller. I'm going Anthony Miller, guys. Anthony Miller is one of my favorite plays this week. Like, that's kind of, I don't want to say off the radar because I think people are catching on to it. But Mitch Trubisky, I've talked about him being a viable streamer this week and a guy that I like in DFS. So the Bears have played so Mitch Trubisky, I should say, has played under Matt Nagy now for 2 seasons. He's played against the Detroit Lions 3 times in that. Every single one of those games, he's thrown 3 touchdowns. 2 of the times he's thrown for over 300 yards. Anthony Miller, his 2 best games of his career are against the Lions. They clearly don't have the talent, and obviously they lost Darius Slay this offseason. Jeff Okudah, their number 3 overall pick, is not going to play. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. So it's like the Bears can choose between Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson. I think both of them can have a big week here. But Anthony Miller, they said, came into camp this year and was a different man. Like, legitimately, they said he grew up, he wants to be one of the best, and he just showed up dedicated. He worked with Trubisky. He worked in the offense, and, he became a dad this offseason. I know that can change a lot of people. It seems like Anthony Miller, he got things together. He's playing healthy because that injury that he's played through the last couple of years, seems like it's finally good. So Anthony Miller, there's a chance for a true breakout here this week. So I do like Miller quite a bit. Let's see. Perseverance is the master of defeat. Ingram or Ebron? I'm going to go with Eric Ingram. Wow. Evan Ingram is who I'm going to go with here. I don't know Eric Ebron's role in that offense. Okay. So you look at it and you say, Eric Ebron is not a good blocker. That much we know, right? He's terrible. He's a terrible blocker. There's a reason that Vance McDonald is still on the roster. They actually kept him on the roster. I think they paid like $5 million to keep him on the roster. So the Steelers run 3 wide receiver sets about 70% of the time. So if Eric Ebron is on the field, to be clear, when you have 3 wide receivers in the field, it's 11 personnel most of the time. You have 1 running back and you have 1 tight end. And if he's not able to block, your team is all of a sudden very predictable in terms of what you want to do. And I don't think this is a game. I mean, this is a game where they don't need to keep their foot on the gas. I think they beat the Giants relatively easy. But I just don't know his role. Like, if Vance McDonald's going to be in there and then they're going to bring in Ebron when they go like 12 personnel and they have 2 wide receivers in the field, okay, that's fine. But how often is that going to happen? I just don't know. So Evan Ingram is someone that actually will be on the field for almost every snap. We know that. We don't have to worry about that. It's a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, but for tight ends, it's better than any other position. All right, let's see. DJ asks, full PPR, Anthony Miller or Jonathan Taylor? Whew. That's really tough. I'm probably going to go Taylor just because it's guaranteed touches. I have high hopes for Miller, but there's a reason I'm not ranking him as a top 20 wide receiver this week, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Mitch Trubisky is automatic, that he's not going to miss. So I'll probably take JT right there. Alexander asks, half PPR, Ridley or Hollywood? This is Ridley. Hollywood Brown is a guy that you put in as a wide receiver 3 and you kind of just hope for the best, right? We're expecting the Ravens to throw the ball a little bit more this year, and it helps that the Browns are missing one of their top 2 cornerbacks this week. Their safety play is they've had some injuries to the safeties. They've had some injuries at linebacker. So the Browns, they can be exploited. I'm not going to say they won't, but I don't know exactly how far this goes. By the way, Galladay officially inactive. I'm trying to read some notes here for you guys. All players and coaches pass their... Okay, yeah. Tevin Coleman might sit week 1. The 49ers are letting him make the call. He has an asthma condition that is affected by the air quality. So if you're relying on someone like Tevin Coleman this week, I would highly advise just have alternate plans. You shouldn't have been relying on him anyways. But let's see. But Hollywood, I like as a wide receiver 3 that you say, I'm okay with boom or bust because I know the upside he presents. But if you're looking for a stable play, Calvin Ridley, and he offers upside too. I'm not going to sit here and pretend this Seattle team does not get a pass rush. And if you give someone like Calvin Ridley time to get open, he's going to do it. So I'm going to take Ridley in that one. Joshua Dyer, Dylan, it wasn't what Mitch said, by the way. It's everyone. Matt Nagy wasn't putting Anthony Miller on the field. He said because basically he just wasn't taking the game as seriously as he should have, and it got better as last year progressed, but this offseason he said he took a step forward. So it wasn't Mitch. Josh asks, full PPR, Crowder or Anthony Miller? Thanks. This one's tough. If you're looking for upside, I think Anthony Miller has it. But I'm probably going to go with Jamison Crowder here in a full PPR format because, again, Crowder, I think minimum catches 5 balls in this game, and that's just hard to find among wide receivers. There's a chance that he catches double-digit passes. There really is because, Buffalo, that you can run the ball against them, but the Jets have 5 new guys on the offensive line. Like, literally, they're starting 5 new starters on the offensive line. It's going to take some time for those guys to gel. So we're going to see a lot of short passes, screen passes. Like Le'Veon Bell will be involved. Crowder's obviously going to be involved in the slot. So I'll take Crowder. I just think he's a safer play. And again, he did have 2 of his biggest games last year against the Bills, so I can't say he's missing upside either. Jack asked, AJ Green, Anthony Miller, or David Montgomery? I'm going to go Anthony Miller here. I told everyone to draft AJ Green, and I stand by that. I think he's going to be fine. But again, we can't sit here and pretend that he didn't miss time with a hamstring injury. They're saying that it's potential that he's going to have somewhat of a limited snap count in his first game back. He hasn't been on a field since 2018, guys. So this is his first week. And on top of that, the reason more than anything, it's like, you have those risks, and then you have a matchup with the Chargers, who acquired Chris Harris Jr. this offseason. I mean, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Pair him with Casey Hayward. This is like one of the best duos in the NFL. So I'm going to give A.J. Green a week to get back in. And before trusting him, I will play Anthony Miller this week. David Montgomery is just I can't trust him. If I have a viable option to not play David Montgomery, I'm going to use that just because I don't know how healthy he is. Soft tissue injuries, those things can pop back up if you rush back from them. I'm not saying he's doing that, but I'm saying that there's a possibility. Let's see. Michael asks, full PPR, Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs? So Ruggs probably would have been my choice before this Cortland Sutton injury, but knowing that Sutton is dinged up and might not play, and even if he does play, he's probably going to be at less than 100%. He is going to be 100%, not probably. But now Jerry Jeudy, and you look at the matchup against the Titans, and you're like, okay, this wasn't like a A-plus matchup where you were saying you must start Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton, but it was a fine matchup. And then we hear about that Adoree Jackson's going to miss this game, their best cornerback. He is missing this game. So Jerry Jeudy, he could come in week 1 of his NFL career and just light it up. I'm kind of hoping he does. I want to watch on primetime. I'm a huge Jerry Jeudy fan. So, I mean, I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy here. Ruggs, I like. It would be nice to know Ruggs' role in the offense, the same as Jeudy, but there's just so many different guys in this offense that you start wondering about. And if this game script goes the way that we project it to, where the Raiders should win this game against the Panthers, who have a whole new coaching staff, there's just so many parts in that team. It's like a brand new defense. A lot of rookies so I think that Josh Jacobs runs all over them. They don't need to highlight Ruggs so much in this game. Ruggs is fine as a wide receiver 4, like a high-end wide receiver 4, but I'm going to go Jeudy with this Sutton injury. All right, statistics online with Dr. Nick, full PPR. Pick 2, John Brown, Kareem Hunt, Boston Scott. Boston Scott is 1 for sure. Like, that's hands down. And then I'm going to go, this one's tough. So I think John Brown has the higher upside, but I don't think I can guarantee him more than 4 or 5 targets in this game. But Kareem Hunt, maybe I would say minimum of 10 touches in this game, but they're going to be probably inefficient. So it's really difficult for me to say, and it's full PPR. I think I got to go Kareem Hunt. I think the game script and what we're projecting for the Browns this week to lose to the Ravens, I think it fits his skill set more than it does someone like Nick Chubb. So we'll go Boston Scott and Kareem Hunt. Just take the guaranteed touches. Even though Brown does have a good matchup, I don't know what the target share is going to look like for him with Stephon Diggs in this offense. They're not going to throw the ball a whole lot to begin with. All right, Daniel asked, Allen Robinson or DJ Moore, half PPR. Well, Daniel, first off, I want to congratulate you on having maybe the best roster of all time. If you have to sit one of Allen Robinson or DJ Moore, you have serious, you have good problems, right? This might be a DFS question, to be fair. I'm going Allen Robinson. Again, this Lions defense, if you look at what they've done the last couple of years without Darius Slay, because Darius Slay has missed games with injury, they were abused, legitimately abused. They lost Damon Harrison up the middle. He's obviously more of a run defender, but he can help against the pass as well. Jeffrey Okudah is a guy that they drafted at number 3 overall. He is out for this game. He's not playing. So, they don't have anybody to slow down Allen Robinson. So if the Bears want to throw the ball to Allen Robinson 15 times, go right ahead because Matt Patricia can't stop it. Jim asked, tags, should I drop Alshon Jeffrey to stash Bryan Edwards in standard? I'm not opposed to it because I don't think anybody's going to run to the waiver wire and grab Alshon. So the way I see it, I would rather roster Bryan Edwards right now. And the reason I say that is because if he goes off in week 1, if he gets, let's say, 7-8 targets, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, he's going to be a big-time waiver wire pickup. Alshon Jeffrey's not playing, so no one's going to get excited about Alshon. If you have an IR spot in your league, they didn't put him on IR. I take it back because they're hoping that he plays before then. I don't think they officially put him on IR. I thought they were going to, but I'm going to say that Bryan Edwards is the one I would probably hold on to because, I don't think people are running to grab Alshon right now. Tommy asks, please help tags. Half PPR start Scott, David Montgomery, or Boyd for your flex. I'm going to go with Boston Scott here. Tyler Boyd is close, but I'll say Boston Scott. I've talked about him quite a bit. Let's see, Noah Gallup or Marvin Jones PPR. This would have been Michael Gallup, but knowing that Galladay is officially out for this game, I'm going to go with Marvin Jones. They're 8 targets minimum here for Marvin Jones. And again, they can choose their matchups against this Bears secondary that doesn't shadow. Kyle Fuller stays on the one side, and they're going to have a rookie on the other side of the field. So they have a new starting safety. The Bears have some moving parts in this offense or in defense, and they're missing Robert Quinn, one of their better pass rushers. So Marvin Jones is a guy that I'm definitely going to play over Gallup. I just know that he's number 1 in the pecking order, and it's not close. Let's see. Nick asked Jonathan Taylor versus Boston Scott. That one I did answer a little bit earlier. I ended up going with Boston Scott. I just feel like there's a little bit too much risk with Jonathan Taylor to pass. I have Jonathan Taylor 2 spots lower than Boston Scott in my rankings right now. Awesome. You guys rock. We have another 20 minutes. And by the way, guys, I just want to let you know that Yates is actually going to take over on the YouTube channel once I wrap up with this. So he's going to be here for the next hour after I get off to answer even more questions. So if for whatever reason I don't get to yours, Yates is going to be here, so he's going to come back. But guys, 8,600 people. Are you serious? You guys rock. Click that like button if you haven't already. All right, let me get back to some more questions. Jonathan O. David Montgomery or Kerryon half PPR. I'm going David Montgomery in that one. And I've been advising against David Montgomery for most of the morning here, but in that one, again, Kerryon is in a 3-way timeshare. DeAndre Swift was removed from the injury report. They apparently, when they acquired Adrian Peterson, they told him he would get the ceremonial first carry or something like that, and that he's going to be involved. Adrian Peterson is not going to sign unless you're telling him he's getting carries. He had a couple teams that were interested in him. I'm going to fade the Lions backfield if I can this week because I don't know what's happening. David Montgomery. The Bears, the reason I said that I felt like David Montgomery was going to be ready for week 1 was because they didn't go after Leonard Fournette when he became available. If they were worried about David Montgomery, it would have made sense. But they didn't even show interest. Then they cut Artavis Pierce, the running back that was behind Ryan Nall. And I was kind of like, okay, it seems like he's going to be ready. And now obviously he is after practicing. So I'm going to go David Montgomery. He's the top guy back there. He might be on a limited snap count or something like that, but he's probably going to get more touches than Kerryon in a better matchup. Let's be honest. Ryan asked PPR flex Scott versus Boyd. I went Scott there. It's so close because I think Tyler Boyd presents a decent floor, but I'm taking, if you're ever torn between a running back and a wide receiver in your flex and you know the running back is guaranteed touches, most of the time I'm going to tell you to lean with that running back. Andre tags better bench stash, Paris Campbell or Joshua Jackson. I don't know if that's so it's Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly. I don't know which one you're saying. It just depends on the rest of your team. Like if you're lacking at running back and you're hoping to find a breakout star, Joshua Kelly would be my choice, I guess. But Paris Campbell is someone who absolutely should be owned, should be on benches, because if he breaks out, it would not shock me. Phillip Rivers loves those targets over the middle of the field, and he really doesn't have anybody else here. I mean, you look at it and you say, is Jack Doyle getting anybody excited? I think he'll be a fine player, but Trey Burton went to IR. They don't have another tight end. The other wide receivers they have, T.Y. Hilton hasn't played much in the slot under Frank Reich, so we don't Michael Pittman is the guy they drafted. He's a perimeter player, so I do like Paris Campbell quite a bit. Derek S. David Montgomery or Hollywood PPR. This is one where I'll take the upside shot with Hollywood. Again, he doesn't present a great floor, but if you're looking, this is a flex spot. Obviously, if you're choosing between a running back and a wide receiver, I'm going to take Hollywood there just because there's a lot of upside. If David Montgomery didn't have any question marks this week, I might lean him, but he does have question marks, and he might only play 50% of the snaps. That would be problematic. Hollywood, his upside is worth taking the risk there. Felix, go. PPR, David Montgomery, Preston Williams, or Leonard Fournette in the flex. I am going to say that I'm going to say David Montgomery here. I've been talking a lot about David Montgomery, but Preston Williams, the guy, he's going to be fine. But that matchup against the Patriots is not a great one for wide receivers. They did have some players opt out, but it shouldn't affect the cornerback play too much. I like Preston Williams, like stash him, don't let him go or anything like that. Leonard Fournette is going to be better, but again, this matchup against the Saints is brutal. I don't like either Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette this week. I think both of them are like weak RB3, RB4 plays. So I'm going to say David Montgomery here. Michael asks CeeDee Lamb or Montgomery. This one's really tough because CeeDee Lamb actually has the best matchup on the field of Dallas wide receivers because as I mentioned, Jalen Ramsey plays in the perimeter. Troy Hill played good last year. And then they got rid of Nickel Roby-Coleman. He actually went to the Eagles, one of the better slot cornerbacks in the game. And now it's like, who's covering the slot? And if that's where CeeDee Lamb's going to play, I would prefer to wait. Here, I'm going to answer this. You're looking for upside. If you want upside, Michael, in your lineup, I think Lamb is the one that presents higher upside in this matchup. If you're looking for a floor, I would go with David Montgomery. Casey help. Chris Godwin or Keenan Allen? That's so tough. That is so tough. I think Keenan Allen's a safer play. I do. If you look at Godwin last year against the Saints, he crushed them week one, or not week one, but the first time they played, he crushed them. And that was when Chris Godwin was still making a name for himself, and people had to realize like this guy's really, really good. And then all of a sudden, the second time they played, it wasn't as good. I don't know what to expect in the first Tom Brady game. I don't know expect in the first Tyrod Taylor game, but what I do know is that Tyrod Taylor doesn't have any other options. Like Tyrod Taylor, it's Keenan Allen. You have Hunter Henry, you have Austin Eckler, but again, those are tight ends, running backs. We're talking about wide receivers. Wide receivers get targets. Mike Williams is going to be active apparently, but I think he's more of a decoy because they have zero wide receiver depth. Like they really had no one to step in. You know what I mean? It's just so. I have Keenan Allen ranked slightly higher. I might regret that. But that's why I have ranked higher here. I just think his matchup is too good to pass up, whereas Godwin, I have some question marks about how he's going to be used. Is Scotty Miller going to be the slot receiver and Godwin's going to be forced to play on the perimeter most of the time? Like, I worry about that. I worry about the fact that beat reporters were saying it looked like he was working against an injury during training camp or something. There's question marks. I'm probably just going to go Keenan Allen and just hope for the best. Timo, Mark Ingram or Chris Carson? I'm going to go Carson here. Mark Ingram, there was only, I think, one game last year where he saw more than 15 carries. He's not too heavily involved in the passing game. And then you add J.K. Dobbins to the mix, and it's like, J.K. Dobbins is going to get a lot more touches than someone like Justice Hill did. So where all of a sudden are these touches going away from? I think that Mark Ingram is going to, he didn't even have a very high ceiling of touches to begin with. And actually, I went back and looked at that. I don't think many people realize this, but Mark Ingram last year, if you if I told you don't look at this and say what do you think the timeshare was between Mark Ingram and then Gus Edwards and Justice Hill? They had 48%. He had 52%. So it was almost a 50-50 timeshare last year, which is kind of crazy. So adding J.K. Dobbins is not going to help. I think Carson is looking at a potential timeshare, like maybe like a 60-40 thing with Carlos Hyde. It shouldn't get there, but it's potential. But still, I'm taking Chris Carson here. I'm going with him. I just feel like that there's a much higher ceiling with Carson. They both have similar floors. K. Will, Chris Herndon, Jalen Reagor. Well, there's two Chris Herndons in there, K. Will. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I would play Chris Herndon. Not a great matchup against Buffalo. They've been really good against tight ends, but at the same time, we talked about this. There's no wide receivers for Sam Darnold to throw to. Like, Brashad Perriman, he's missed a lot of camp with a knee injury. It wouldn't surprise me if he left in the first quarter because his knee flared up. Denzel Mims not playing. Chris Hogan. It's Chris Hogan. This team signed Kevin White. It just shows you where they're at. So Chris Herndon should get targets, at least 6 targets in this game. Jalen Reagor, I love Reagor. I think he's going to be fantastic, but I don't know how to feel about him in his first game back, especially knowing he wasn't supposed to play this week. So I'll go Herndon there. Eddie, amazed that all these people need so much help. My goodness, people, you are all new. Eddie, don't be a jerk. People need help. It's the first week of the season. A lot of people don't know the changes that happened this offseason. So, Eddie, get better. Alex, Max, Singletary, or DK Metcalf non-PPR? I'm going DK there. I'm going to go DK. Mac is a fine play, but DK in that game against Atlanta, I think there's a chance for an explosion there, and I don't want to miss it. Singletary, I have him in a 14-team league where I'm starting him in the flex, and I don't love it. I don't know why, but I don't. But Mac is the one I would consider. He probably does come with a safer floor than DK, but I feel like DK can explode this week. It's so tough between those two. Flip a coin, man. Whatever one that, know what I do in these situations where if I tell you that I don't know how to do, I'm torn between the two, and I'm sorry. Most of the time I have a feeling about one of them, but the more I think about this one, the more I'm like, what you should do is this: flip a coin, and while that coin is in the air, it doesn't matter what it lands on. While it's in the air, what do you want it to land on? And that is how I decide who I'm going to put in my lineup. Let's see. G-Force, pick 2 PPR, Anthony Miller, Zach Moss, Kerryon Johnson, Chris Thompson. Anthony Miller is definitely one of them, and I'm going to go with Chris Thompson, the other one. I just feel like the Jags don't have enough running backs in the roster right now where Chris Thompson's going to be, he's going to be thrusted into 10 to 12 touches this game, a lot of them catches, so definitely presents a floor where Zach Moss and Kerryon just don't. Let's see. Andres. All right, I'm going to try and get through as many questions as I can for the next 10 minutes because I know I talked through these, and I probably talked about most players by now. So let me just run through and I'll give you guys answers as much as I can. Andres, Mike Evans or Justin Jefferson? This one's Mike Evans. I'll take the chance there. Eli asks Scott or Diggs? Boston Scott. Boston Scott. Let's see. G.O. asks Gordon, Montgomery, Scott, half PPR. I'm going Scott there. Scott is the one I would choose. Carol asks Gurley, Drake, Scott, Taylor, non-PPR need 2. Okay, Gurley's one of them, and I think I'm going to go Drake as the other. I think I'm going to go Gurley and Drake there. The other 2 are in timeshares where I don't have to worry about the touches for Gurley or Drake. Let's see. Ed asks Tyler Boyd or D-Jax in a half PPR. That's tough. Not going to lie. Looking for a floor, I go Tyler Boyd. Looking for a ceiling, I go D-Jax. Charles, OBJ or Marvin Jones in a half PPR. I'm probably going to go OBJ. It's close, but I probably lean OBJ there. Al asked Boston Scott or Edelman for flex and PPR. I would go with Boston Scott. Again, we don't know what's going on with Cam and how he's going to target his wide receivers. I would imagine Edelman should be able to get it done against Miami. They're probably going to have the rookie Noah Igbenogany in the slot, which would mean Edelman matched up with a rookie should bode well. But again, Cam has never targeted a slot receiver very heavily, so that's the part we have to wonder about. Steven asks Crowder, Reagor, or Preston Williams, non-PPR. I go Crowder there. I think there's a floor. Jeffrey Richardson, Herndon, Chris Conley, or Josh Reynolds. I'm probably going to go with Herndon. I think Laviska Shenault might play over Chris Conley, and I think Van Jefferson might play over Josh Reynolds. There's just too many question marks with those guys. Jason asked Mack or Bell. I'm going to play... I'm going to go Le'Veon Bell. There's too much hate against Bell. I think that the floor is there. Probably a higher ceiling with Marlon Mack, but I would probably play it safe with Le'Veon. He's going to have, I'd say, 18 touches in this game. Joe asked James White or Antonio Gibson, PPR. I have Gibson slightly higher just because I think that the floor that we used to get with James White might have deteriorated with the loss of Tom Brady. So I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson and take a shot at the upside there. Reed asked Mostert, Scott, Ingram, Metcalf. Those four. I mean, there's 4 options here. I think I have Mark Ingram the highest of them. Again, when it's 4 players, it just I don't want to spend too much. Brendan, Le'Veon Bell or Terry McLaurin to PPR flex. I probably play Le'Veon Bell. Guaranteed touches. I don't think either of them will be highly efficient with their touches. They're both going to get a lot of them, but take the running back when you're torn between those. Matthew asked James White or Melvin Gordon III. I'd play Melvin Gordon, even if Melvin Gordon is splitting the workload with Phillip Lindsay. I still think they're probably going to give him goal line touches. Melvin Gordon's been so good on the goal line. Let's see, Ray. Hey, Tags, how are you? I'm good, man. I'm phenomenal. I mean, we have football starting in an hour. This is friggin' awesome. Should I play Clement or Murray in a standard? Honestly, I think it might not be crazy to say Corey Clement is probably the better play. Latavius Murray last year against this team, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is so damn good against the run. They held Latavius, I think it was the RB48 and RB52 finishes, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, that's where I would go. Let's see. Habib asked Anthony Miller, Cohen, Lindsay, half PPR. I'm probably going to go with Anthony Miller there. I just feel like I'm chasing the upside a little bit because I can't say how many touches Cohen and Lindsay are guaranteed. Sit 1, full PPR. A-Rob, Chark, Keenan Allen, Marvin Jones. Oh, if I'm sitting 1, it would be Marvin Jones of that group. Those are great starters, dude. Nathan, you should not even be worried. Biscuit, Bales, pick 2, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, and Terry McLaurin. I would pick Keenan Allen and Tyler Lockett as my 2. Travis asked PPR flex, Kareem Hunt or Henry Ruggs. PPR. I'll play Ruggs, I think. I think I'm going to chase the upside at Ruggs. I don't think either of them are guaranteed like a ton of touches. I'll probably go Ruggs. It's close, though. Anthony asked Diggs or Gurley in a full PPR. I would play Gurley. I think Gurley has a chance at multiple touchdowns this game. He's played 5 career games against the Seahawks. He scored 11 times in them. Again, I know he's part of a new offense, but let's not pretend that this offense isn't high scoring. Gordon or Taylor. I would play Taylor. Again, we're worried about the timeshare with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, and I think the talent gap is minimal there. Whereas like Taylor and Mack, I think Taylor's the more talented back. Even if it's 50-50, the matchup is too good to pass up against Jacksonville. Mike Evans or Mostert, I'd go Mostert for sure, especially knowing that it seems like Tevin Coleman may not play because of the quality of the air. He's apparently has asthma that the 49ers are leaving it up to him if he plays, which tells me they probably had to move forward and say, we're not going to revolve our game plan around him. Let's see. Full PPR, Allen Lazard or Jarvis Landry for a flex. I'm going to go with Landry. I don't love it. Lazard, I'm really curious. He's a wait-and-see guy for me. I think Lazard can be a player, and I think he's a guy that you should have rostered in fantasy leagues. I couldn't believe he was going as late as he was. But let's go with Landry this week and just kind of see what happens with Lazard. Bing Bong Day, full PPR, OBJ, Parker, or Boyd. This is between Boyd and OBJ. It's really tough. I'm gonna go with Odell just because it's Odell Beckham. He's still very good at football. He's not going to have a top 5 game or anything like that, but he's still Odell Beckham. OC, White or Moss, PPR. In a PPR, I'll go James White over Zach Moss. Jose, sit OBJ and flex for Jamison Crowder or Ruggs. I would not. No, I would not. Again, guys, Odell Beckham is still the number 1 wide receiver. It is a tough matchup against the Ravens, but at the same time, he's a guy that should see 7-8 targets. And if you're giving Odell Beckham 7 or 8 targets, I just think that the floor is there. And the ceiling, we obviously know it's Odell. Vic asked Boston Scott or A.J. Brown PPR. I'm going to go Boston Scott and take the guaranteed touches, man. Like, I have A.J. Brown, I think, ranked as my number 17 wide receiver this week, and I have Boston Scott as my RB 19. So it kind of goes to show it's like they're in similar territory, but again, you take the guaranteed touches when you can get them. But that's crazy. You have to bench A.J. Brown. I mean, when you guys have to bench A.J. Brown, I think you guys have a really good football team. Judy or A.J. Brown, this one would be A.J. Brown for me. I like Judy, but it's his first game. Fire Dan. says Landry or Deontay Johnson. This one I'm slowly creeping towards Deontay Johnson. He was removed from the injury report with that toe injury or whatever they were talking about. The matchup against the Giants is obviously a good one, whereas Jarvis Landry, we've heard that it's potential that he might be on somewhat of a snap count. Coming off that hip surgery that he had, that was like major surgery, and I figured that I was surprised when he was ready to go for training camp, but they're saying that they could limit his snaps, which is something. So I'll go Deontay Johnson. Full PPR, Akers or Boston? I'm going to go Boston Scott here because it seems like Darrell Henderson is going to be active. He is going to play, which means that Akers is going to split time with him. He's going to split time with Malcolm Brown. There's some question marks there for sure. All right. Let's see. I can get a couple more in here. Full PPR, James Robinson, Tariq Cohen, James White, RB spot. I'm going to go with James Robinson. I think that he should work in the passing game a little bit. I don't know if he's going to get the targets that Cohen and White will, but I think Robinson is going to be locked into like at least 12 carries. Like he is the early down back. He's really all they have on the roster right now. So I'm going to go James Robinson there. Corey S. non-PPR flex, Kareem Hunt, James Robinson, or Zach Moss. Wow, it's crazy that these many questions are coming about James Robinson now. I'm going to say James Robinson is probably the play for me. Let's see. Chad asked Boston Scott, Chris Carson, Marvin Jones for the flex spot. I'm going to go with Chris Carson in that one. Let's see. All right. And the last one I will close it out with here. Guys, thank you so much. Seriously, like almost 10,000 people in here. It's like going to a concert. And you guys are awesome. Seriously, we wouldn't be here without you guys. Over 1,000 likes in this video. You guys are awesome. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click like. Do whatever you got to do. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'll close it out on one more question. Let's see. I'm going to try and choose one that I haven't talked about yet. Kyle Reardon asked, half PPR flex, Zach Ertz or Julian Edelman? This one's Ertz. I mean, when you have Jalen Reagor, who was not expected to play, you have Alshon Jeffrey out, you have Miles Sanders out, all this adds to Zach Ertz just being funneled targets. Funneled. I honestly don't know if I can see a scenario where Ertz doesn't see at least 10 targets in this game. That's really good, obviously, for his projections. So I'm going to say Zach Ertz. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, it means everything that you guys are here with me. And hopefully you guys get to join me next week. But until then, we're actually, by the way, I want to remind you, we're going to be back. I'm going to be back tonight. Actually, Dan Harris and I are going to be doing the show tonight. I don't even know what time it's scheduled for because it's the first time we're doing a live stream. I think we're doing it's either at 7 or 7:30 Eastern time. We're going to be right back here live streaming for you guys, recapping the games, talking about them. The biggest surprises. Dan's going to ask me, what's your problem, man? But right after me, once I log off here, you are actually going to be going to Yates. So Yates is actually going to go. I think it's going to be a new link for you guys, but just click on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and ask Yates any questions that I didn't get to. But seriously, thank you so much, guys. Greatly appreciate it. Best of luck in week 1.